A quick like and subscribe really helps our channel grow and allows us to bring you even more amazing content. Thank you for your support.
Title: Doing small acts of revenge to chip away at my BF's sister's ego. Let me set the scene for you. Imagine a sunlit Sunday afternoon in the small town of Maplewood, where the air is heavy with the fragrance of blooming lilacs and the sound of laughter mingles with the distant chirping of birds. It's the kind of day that feels almost too perfect, where families gather in their backyards for barbecues and the world seems to pause for a moment. And yet, here I am, crouched behind my curtains, heart racing with a mix of anxiety and excitement, feeling like a puppeteer pulling strings in a tragicomedy that only I fully understand. You see, my boyfriend, Alex, has a sister named Jenna who effortlessly steals the show in every room she enters. Picture her, poised and polished, with glossy chestnut hair cascading over her shoulders, and a smile that could light up the darkest corners of a room. She's the star athlete, the top student, and the one everyone turns to for advice. She's the kind of girl whose Instagram is a highlight reel of her perfect life, a life that feels like a direct comparison to my own, filled with the usual messiness and uncertainty we all try to hide behind filtered selfies. As individuals, we are stark contrasts. While I thrive in the warmth of quiet companionship, a little chaos, and honest laughter, Jenna exudes an air of privilege and perfection that makes my heart clench with something that's probably jealousy, but has morphed into something much darker. Every time we meet, there's a subtle contest in her gaze, a challenge that says, "Can you even keep up?" Driven by a sense of inadequacy, I felt my self-esteem eroded bit by bit, like the steady drip of an old faucet. But there's something about the way she glances at me, her perfectly manicured brows slightly raised, that fills me with an inexplicable urge to fight back. It's a game I never signed up for, yet here I am, captivated by the idea of tipping the scales, chipping away at that polished image just a little at a time, small acts of revenge that might not even be noticed at first, but like tiny pebbles dropped into a lake, they create ripples. This isn't the typical story of revenge you might be thinking about. No grand schemes or explosive confrontations. It's quieter, insidious even. Imagine the tension of a tightrope walk, the thrill of balance, knowing that with every step I take, I risk falling. But the sweet satisfaction of disrupting her carefully curated facade is worth the risk, isn't it? So here I am, on the brink of something that might just unleash a storm beneath that meticulously polished exterior. What's the harm in a little fun? Just a few small acts to level the playing field, as I inch closer to what feels like an inevitable confrontation with myself as much as with Jenna. The question is, how far am I willing to go, and at what cost? The day is sunny, but the clouds are gathering, and I can't help but wonder what kind of storm I'm about to invite into our lives. The seed of resentment began to sprout about a month ago, during a casual Sunday dinner at Alex's family home. I remember the moment as vividly as if it were painted in strokes of gray and crimson. There we all were, gathered around the dining table, laughter echoing off the floral wallpaper, when Jenna casually brought up her recent achievements at college. An internship with a prestigious firm, another award for her athletic prowess, and to top it all off, she casually mentioned her plans to study abroad next fall. As she spoke, her voice oozed confidence, a melodic cadence that drowned out everything else. I sat across from her, picking at my plate, each forkful of pasta feeling increasingly heavy as she regaled us with her accomplishments. I wanted to be happy for her. I really did. But with every word, a familiar knot twisted in my stomach. There was an unspoken competition that hung thick in the air, a contest that I hadn't consciously chosen to enter yet felt trapped within. "Right, your name? You should totally visit Jenna while she's studying abroad," Alex chimed in, his voice bright and intended to uplift. But I felt the heat of Jenna's eyes on me, and the challenge in her smirk felt like a dagger twisting deeper into my already fragile self-esteem. "Sure, that'd be fun," I managed to reply, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. But inside, the conflict raged. I could feel the pressure of her perfection suffocating me, an invisible weight pushing me down into an abyss of doubt and resentment. I should have brushed it off, laughed it off, even. But I didn't. Instead, the idea of my inadequacy crystallized into something sharper, something more visceral. After that evening, the encounters with Jenna grew increasingly unbearable. I started to replay moments in my mind, dissecting every word exchanged, every laugh shared. The way she effortlessly commanded attention made me feel small, like a shadow standing in the presence of light. It was a toxic loop I couldn't escape, and deep down, I knew I had two choices: to continue living in her shadow or to fight back in the only way I felt I could, by reclaiming my worth, even if that meant targeting hers. And then it happened, the final straw that ignited the flame of my silent rebellion. Alex's family decided to throw a surprise birthday party for him, and I was tasked with organizing it. I poured my heart into the preparations, thinking of ways to make it truly special, to showcase not just my love for him but my worth as part of this family. I meticulously planned everything down to the last detail, from the decor to his favorite foods. But Jenna, oh Jenna, couldn't let me have my moment. The evening of the party, she arrived late, like a storm cloud shrouded in glimmering sequins. Her presence alone demanded the spotlight. As guests gathered around her, calling her name and complimenting her latest accomplishments, I felt my heart sink deeper into a chasm of invisibility. The moment I had hoped would solidify my place in this family was slipping through my fingers like sand. Then, during the cake-cutting ceremony, Jenna sashayed over, her laughter ringing like chimes in the wind. "Alex, I hope you don't mind, but I brought you a little something," she said, pulling out a beautifully wrapped gift that sparkled under the dim lights. No one even noticed the cake I had baked, the one made with love and care. All eyes were on her, that perfect smile, the perfect package, the perfect sister. I felt like I was fading into the wallpaper, a ghost haunting my own boyfriend's birthday party. As guests gathered around Jenna to see what treasure she had gifted him, I forced a smile and clapped along, but inside, I felt something inside me crack. It was humbling, humiliating even, to realize that my best efforts, the countless hours I had spent planning this party, were overshadowed by a single moment of her divine intervention. I was supposed to be the girlfriend, the one who mattered, yet there I stood, forgotten. After the guests had left, I retreated to the safety of Alex's bedroom, my heart still heavy with disappointment. Jenna's laughter echoed in my ears, mocking me like a cruel lullaby. I had invested so much of myself into this family, but it seemed they only had eyes for her. In that moment, a thought flickered in my mind: what if I could knock her down a peg? Just once, I wanted to see that smile falter, that confidence falter, to feel as though I was on the same playing field. That night, a plan began to take shape. The first act of my revenge was deceptively simple. I decided to take a page out of her book. For the next few weeks, I shifted my focus to social media, a battleground where she thrived. I began posting snippets of my life that showcased my interests and passions, pictures of me hiking, trying out new recipes, and even some candid shots of me hanging out with friends. I crafted captions that hinted at my successes, subtly undermining her perfect narrative. At first, it felt empowering. I watched as my follower count crept up, while Jenna continued to bask in her curated existence. Yet, the more I posted, the more I realized I was trapped in a cycle of validation I wasn't sure I wanted. My phone buzzed with likes and compliments flooded my notifications, but the hollow feeling inside only grew. I wanted her to notice, to feel threatened, but did I truly want to become like her? Then came the moment that shattered whatever resolve I had left. One evening, I was scrolling through my feed and stumbled upon a photo Jenna had posted, a stunning snapshot from her recent trip to Europe, celebrating her study abroad success. The sun poured down on her, highlighting every perfect contour of her face, every carefree laugh shared with friends. But it was the comments that stung the most. "You're so lucky. I'm so envious." Along with various emojis that could only be described as worship. I felt the familiar knot of jealousy coil tightly around my heart, but this time it was different. A furious determination ignited within me. If I couldn't take her down through my own successes, maybe I could disrupt her flawless facade with a little chaos. I began to plan my next act. During a casual get-together at Alex's house, I orchestrated a small accident. I spilled a drink on Jenna's pristine white dress, drawing gasps from the crowd. "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry," I exclaimed, forcing a smile that felt like a mask. But as I watched her eyes flash with surprise, then anger, a twisted sense of satisfaction bloomed within me. I relished the way her cheeks flushed with embarrassment as she rushed to the restroom, the spotlight of the moment shifting away from her. But it didn't stop there. Jenna's reaction only fueled my fire. I grew bolder, planning small acts of sabotage. I slipped a note into her gym locker, signed anonymously, playfully calling her out on her overconfidence. I had crossed a line, and I felt a mix of exhilaration and shame. The thrill of watching her composure crack just slightly was addictive, and I couldn't deny the rush that came with it. Yet, as the weeks unfolded, I realized this small act of revenge was only the beginning of something darker, more consuming. The final straw came during another family dinner, one where Jenna had once again effortlessly stolen the spotlight. As we sat around the table, her latest saga unfolded, a tale of triumph at a recent track meet, where she not only won but also broke a record, the same record that I had silently hoped to claim once upon a time when I was on the team. The room erupted in applause, and I forced a smile, clapping along as if the sound of my hands clashing together could drown out the bitter taste of envy rising in my throat. But it wasn't just her victories that gnawed at me, it was the way everyone gravitated toward her, how Alex's parents beamed with pride as if she was the only child in the room. I was becoming a spectator in my own life, relegated to the background while the world celebrated her. And then, as if fate wanted to make a cruel joke, Jenna leaned over during dessert and said, "You know, I'm not trying to be rude, but it's hard seeing someone trying so hard when the talent just isn't there." The air felt thick, suffocating. I could feel the sting of humiliation wash over me, the laughter of my boyfriend's family suddenly feeling like mockery. I simply nodded, forcing down the urge to retort, to confront her ego head-on. Instead, I felt the cracks in my facade deepen. The words echoed relentlessly in my mind, amplifying my insecurities until I could hardly breathe. That night, as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, Jenna's dismissive comment replayed in a cruel loop, mingling with the laughter and applause from the dinner table. I felt like a shadow, a lost ghost, and I could no longer bear the weight of being overshadowed. It was clear to me now, I couldn't simply sit back and watch her reign over my life. I needed to take matters into my own hands. The moment crystallized in my mind when I decided that I would turn my small acts of revenge into something deliberate, something more significant. I would chip away at that polished image, one carefully planned act at a time. Each small rebellion felt like reclaiming a piece of myself, a reclaiming of power that had been stolen from me. I began to jot down ideas in a small notebook, my thoughts morphing from whispers of revenge to a full-blown manifesto of mischief. One act I planned was to subtly sabotage her social image, highlighting moments where her confidence faltered or her imperfections showed. I wouldn't have to destroy her, all I needed was to poke the bubble she lived in, just enough to cause a ripple, to reveal the cracks in her perfect facade. My first target? The next family barbecue was just around the corner, an opportunity ripe for the plucking. I decided to reveal a little secret about her athletic prowess. Jenna had a tendency to exaggerate her achievements. I'd drop hints about how she'd conveniently forgotten to mention the disqualifications she had faced in her earlier competitions. The idea sent a thrill of anticipation through me. I felt my heartbeat quicken, not from fear but from the intoxicating promise of reclaiming my narrative, even if that meant tearing hers down a notch. I made my plans meticulously. I envisioned myself casually mentioning it to Jenna at the barbecue. I would let it slip during a casual conversation, perhaps while we were all gathered around the grill, the smoky scent of burgers wafting in the air, or maybe while exchanging playful banter with Alex's cousins. The aim was to plant a seed of doubt, just enough for the family to start questioning her perfect image. I'd keep it light, almost teasing, making sure it didn't seem like an outright attack, more like friendly ribbing between siblings. Revenge plan, date. The family barbecue is set for next Saturday. Preparation. I need to ensure I'm looking my best, dressed casually chic to project confidence. I'll prep a few lighthearted anecdotes to share, making myself the center of attention for a moment before I subtly direct the spotlight toward Jenna's past, reveal the exaggeration. I'll casually mention a conversation I had with one of Jenna's old teammates, someone I could easily have run into while reminiscing about high school sports. I'll make it sound like a lighthearted joke, something that can easily be brushed off but leaves an underlying sting. You remember when Jenna claimed that she was the fastest runner in high school, right? I heard she got a short track record because she didn't pay attention to the rules, like that one time she was disqualified for stepping out of bounds. Timing, I'll wait until the family is relaxed, maybe during a game of cornhole or while everyone is gathered around, enjoying drinks. The laughter will create a light atmosphere, making my words seem playful rather than mean-spirited. Observe the fallout. As soon as I mention it, I plan to watch Jenna's reaction closely. I'm betting her smile will falter, just for a moment before she laughs it off, but I will see the flicker of annoyance behind her eyes. If I can catch that on camera, I'll be ready to record the moment, just a small clip for evidence of my success, planting more doubts. If that goes well, I won't stop there. The following week, at a family dinner, I'll accidentally bring up another one of her supposed victories. Maybe I'll mention that I heard from friends that Jenna had once claimed to win an award she had actually come second for. Just enough to keep the family wondering how genuine her achievements really are. I'll play it off, of course, as if I'm just sharing random trivia. Possible obstacles: Jenna's defense. I know she's quick on her feet and may try to deflect or deny any insinuations. I have to be prepared for that, perhaps by recalling more examples of her exaggerated stories as backup. Family's loyalty. There's a risk that Alex's parents, especially, will defend her. I need to tread lightly here, making sure to keep my tone light and playful while still driving the point home. I'll have to gauge their reactions and adjust my approach accordingly. My own conscience. With each small act, I can feel the weight of my intentions tugging at my conscience. I have to remind myself of my purpose, to reclaim my confidence, without getting lost in a spiral of cruelty. Step 6. The finale, gathering evidence. If my first few attempts at planting seeds of doubt work, but the day of the barbecue dawned bright and sunny, the kind of day that beckons laughter and warmth. I stood in front of the mirror, my heart racing with anticipation, nerves tingling beneath my skin. I had chosen a peach sundress that hugged my silhouette just right, confident, yet subtly inviting. My hair cascaded in soft waves, the sunlight catching glimmers of gold. I wanted to feel good about myself as I prepared for this mission. I needed to embody the energy I wanted to radiate. As I stepped into Alex's family home, the familiar aroma of grilled meat wafted through the air, mingling with the sound of laughter and distant music weaving a tapestry of memories and joy. I forced myself to breathe deeply, embracing the moment. Today was not just about the food, it was about the opportunity to reclaim my worth. Jenna arrived fashionably late, dressed in high-waisted denim shorts and a snug top that accentuated her figure. She floated into the room, all smiles and charm, effortlessly drawing everyone's attention toward her like moths to a flame. I could already sense the familiar knot of jealousy in my stomach begin to tighten. But not today, I reminded myself. Today, I was armed and ready. As the family gathered around the grill, drinks in hand, I approached the group casually, weaving through the throng of Alex's cousins, the atmosphere electric with excitement. Jenna was regaling them with tales of her latest track meet when I seized my moment. I stepped in, feigning nonchalance, and said, "You know, Jenna, it's impressive how you keep breaking records. Wasn't there a little hiccup with the last one, though? Something about disqualification?" The laughter around the grill faltered, eyes shifting toward her, unsure of how to react. For a heartbeat, silence hung heavy in the air, pregnant with anticipation. I felt a rush of adrenaline, and every second stretched into eternity as I watched Jenna's perfectly polished smile falter ever so slightly. I didn't miss the flicker of surprise in her eyes, swiftly masked by her carefully constructed facade. "What are you talking about?" Jenna shot back, her voice tight with an edge that lingered beneath the surface. She forced a laugh, but I heard the brittle undertone, as if the laughter could shatter at any moment. "You must have heard it wrong. I've been winning. Just ask anyone." A confident smile returned, but I could sense the cracks beginning to form. "Of course," I replied, my tone light, an innocent mask. "I just remember hearing someone mention the rules, you know, stepping out of bounds. It happens to the best of us." I tilted my head slightly, letting my words linger in the air like a taut string ready to snap. I could see the shift in the atmosphere, curiosity, confusion, and the faintest edge of doubt creeping into the conversation. Alex's cousins exchanged glances, their laughter faltering as they leaned in, the intrigue palpable. They began to whisper among themselves, their eyes darting back and forth between Jenna and me, a new dynamic unfolding right before my eyes. It was the moment I had hoped for, the moment where her perfect image began to ripple with uncertainty. Jenna straightened her back, jaw clenched tight. "That's not how it went down at all," she insisted, her voice rising above the din of the barbecue, drawing more attention. "You're just trying to make me look bad." The tension in the air crackled, and I felt a thrill of satisfaction at seeing her confidence waver. The barbecue continued on, but the atmosphere had shifted, transformed into a battleground of sorts. Jenna's once invincible facade now felt fragile, like glass teetering on the brink of shattering. I watched her as she tried to regain control, deflecting with jokes and laughter that seemed more forced than genuine. But deep down, I knew I had succeeded in my quest to chip away at her ego, if only by a sliver. Over the next few days, the effects of that family barbecue rippled through our lives in unexpected ways. Jenna's confidence was still there, but it had become a little less certain, a little less unyielding. I couldn't help but notice the way she would occasionally glance at her phone, perhaps checking for social media mentions or texts from family members. I imagined her feeling the growing scrutiny, the whispers of doubt hanging in the air like smoke from that barbecue grill. Surprisingly, Alex noticed too. He would often catch me staring off into space, lost in thought, and I could see the concern etched across his face. "Are you okay? You seemed different lately," he remarked one evening as we shared popcorn while watching TV. I forced a smile and assured him everything was fine, but could he sense the darkness I had invited into our lives? The guilt that began to gnaw at my conscience was mounting. The true consequences of my actions came to light during another family dinner a week later. As everyone gathered around the table, I noticed Jenna's unease more than ever. She fumbled with her utensils, her laughter strained as she tried to engage in conversation. But this was a different Jenna, a girl who had once thrived in the spotlight but now seemed to search for it like a lost child. When Jenna left the table to take a phone call, the conversation shifted. "What's going on with her?" Alex's dad asked, glancing around the table, his brows furrowed in concern. "She seems off." I stayed silent. I wanted to cry out that it was my doing, that I had taken pleasure in dismantling her confidence piece by piece, but I couldn't. The words caught in my throat like a fishbone, causing me to choke on the reality of what I had done. What began as a little poke at Jenna's inflated ego had birthed something much darker, a ripple effect that seeped into every family gathering, every casual meeting. I watched as she struggled for validation, her once bright aura dimming under the weight of suspicion and doubt. Weeks turned into months, and Jenna's demeanor shifted drastically. She began pulling back from family gatherings, opting to spend more time with friends who didn't know her past, her perfect reputation. I witnessed the beautiful irony of it. I had aimed to bring her down a notch, yet the shadows of my revenge had swallowed her whole. The girl who once seemed untouchable was now a mere shadow of herself. But what hit the hardest wasn't the transformation in Jenna, but the reflection of my own actions. Each small act of revenge built upon the last like a house of cards, and I began to see the cracks forming in my own structure. The satisfaction I had felt from watching her falter began to feel like chains binding me to a sinking ship. I still had a life to lead, a reality to face, and I couldn't deny that each act of sabotage felt like a blow to my own integrity. The warmth I once felt in Alex's family home began to feel colder, the laughter that echoed off the floral wallpaper grew more distant. I had become the outsider, the instigator.
I still remember that day in vivid detail, the way the sunlight streamed through the window, casting a warm glow on the wooden floor of my tiny apartment in Seattle. I leaned against the cool granite of my kitchen counter, clutching my phone like it was a lifeline, my heart racing as if it had just sprinted a marathon. I was supposed to feel excitement, relief, maybe even joy. Instead, I felt a knot tightening in my stomach, a dread I couldn't quite shake. It was late August, the air still thick with summer humidity, but inside, a storm was brewing. My name is Claire, and what I thought would be a turning point in my life, a savvy investment in a small tech startup, had turned into a nightmare. I was a 32-year-old marketing manager, with dreams of financial independence and a cabin in the woods, away from the grind of city life. I had spent nearly 2 years saving up, poring over spreadsheets and market trends, convinced I had found the golden opportunity. The company, let's call them Tech Vision, started with a flicker of hope. I met their charismatic CEO, Max, at an industry conference. His pitch was electric, and I was entranced by his charm. He painted a picture of innovation, of changing the world and making a fortune while doing it. I can still hear his smooth voice, the way he made everything sound so easy. My friends, Hannah and Ben, urged me to take the plunge. After all, investing in the future of technology was what everyone was talking about. But now, here I stood, the reality of my choice crashing down around me like a wave, each moment filled with the acrid taste of betrayal. I was staring at the bank statement that felt more like a dagger than a document. Nearly $200,000, my dreams, my plans, my future, vanished into thin air. The glossy brochure I had kept pinned to my fridge began to feel more like a cruel joke than a promise of prosperity. The worst part? Ignoring the gnawing voice in the back of my mind that whispered, "What if this isn't real?" That voice had kept me awake at night, but I silenced it with logic, with hope. Now, I wished I had listened. Max and his team were unreachable, their website vanished, their numbers disconnected. Gone like a ghost, leaving behind nothing but shadows of my shattered trust. As I paced the floor, desperation clawed at me, twisting into something darker. I could feel resentment bubbling beneath the surface, a fire igniting, a thirst for justice that morphed into something more sinister. I wasn't just angry, I was driven. What had started as an innocent venture had transformed into a battle cry. I knew I had to take action. I wouldn't let them walk away scot-free. I needed help, but more than that, I needed a plan. So, here I am, pen trembling, navigating the thin line between right and wrong, poised to turn this pain into something powerful. The clock ticked ominously in the background, a constant reminder that time was running out. I was ready to take back what was mine, I was ready to fight. And as I prepared to unleash the storm that was brewing within me, I had to wonder just how far I was willing to go. The betrayal unfolded slowly, like a flower blooming only to reveal the thorns hidden beneath its petals. At first, I couldn't comprehend the full magnitude of what had happened. Each day since the investment had been a blur of denial and disbelief. I replayed the moments over and over in my mind, every conversation with Max, every assurance that this was the path to fortune. I should have sensed the danger lurking behind his polished smile. The first inkling that something was off came just a week after I wired the money. I had received an email from TechVision, a casual update that promised exciting developments. "Things are moving quickly," it said, "we're preparing for our first big launch and investors are going to be thrilled." I felt a flutter of hope in my chest, but with every passing day, the thrill was overtaken by a gnawing anxiety. The follow-up emails grew fewer, the updates less frequent. I remember staring at my screen, waiting for a response to my increasingly frantic inquiries, each unanswered email a dagger to my faith in them. "What is going on?" I whispered to myself, optimism waning as confusion took its place. Had I really just watched my hard-earned money disappear? How could I have been so naive? I thought of Max, his confident demeanor, and the way he spoke of integrity and innovation. I had trusted him. Slowly, that trust twisted into something darker, a bitter taste in my mouth whenever I thought of him. Then came the day I decided to do some digging. I spent hours on the internet, pulling at every thread I could find about TechVision. As I sifted through forums and financial records, reality hit me harder than a freight train. The company had a history of scams. My heart sank deeper as I read the stories of others like me, caught in the web of false promises and shattered dreams. Each story mirrored mine, each name echoing my own foolishness. I felt sick, like I had swallowed poison. How could I have been so blind? Anger surged through me like a tidal wave, drowning out any trace of pity. I was furious, not just at them, but at myself. I had let hope blind me to the truth, and now that hope had turned to ashes. Night after night, I lay in bed, the ceiling spinning above me as I wrestled with my thoughts. I pictured Max's face, his charming smile morphing into a sneer. "You think you can just take my money and run?" I seethed, clenching my fists as I stared into the darkness. And then it happened. One night, fueled by rage and a sense of betrayal so profound it felt like a living thing within me, I began crafting my plan. I focused on the faces of everyone who had wronged me, not just Max, but the entire TechVision team. They were out there, living their lives while I grappled with my shattered dreams. No way in hell would I let them get away with this. But the more I plotted, the more I felt the duality of my emotions, the delicate balance between seeking justice and the intoxicating allure of revenge. I was scared of what I might become. Would I lose myself in this pursuit? Would I cross a line I could never uncross? Yet the thought of standing back and doing nothing felt worse, like a slow suffocation. Time passed, and as the days turned into weeks, I became a shell of my former self, consumed by the desire for retribution. I stopped answering calls from friends, stopped engaging in the joys of life I once relished. Instead, my nights were filled with the sound of furious typing, late-night forums, and meticulous research, each click of my keyboard echoing like a gunshot in an empty room. It was just me and the growing pit of despair turning into a raging inferno of vengeance. The screen illuminated my face with a sickly glow, casting shadows of guilt and obsession. The isolation was crushing. Hannah, my closest friend, started checking in on me more often. "Are you okay?" She would text, her concern palpable through the screen. But how could I explain the turmoil brewing inside? Each time I saw her name flash on my phone, it felt like another reminder of the life I was losing. I could hear her voice, "We just want you to be happy, Claire." But to them, I was just being overly dramatic, a victim of my own ambition. They didn't understand the depths of my despair, the humiliation of being scammed, the shame of feeling foolish. I pulled away from them, retreating further into my shell of anger. Things escalated when, out of desperation, I reached out to other victims I had stumbled across in my research. I found a Facebook group dedicated to holding Tech Vision accountable. At first, it felt like a lifeline, a glimmer of hope in my darkest hour. But the deeper I delved, the more I realized how widespread the deception truly was. I wasn't alone, the group was filled with people from all walks of life, each with their own anguished stories of hardship. It should have made me feel less isolated, but instead, it only deepened my sense of betrayal. There were parents who had drained their savings, retirees who had risked it all, young professionals like me. Every story was a mirror reflecting my own pain. But with this newfound connection came an overwhelming wave of despair. The stories grew darker, revealing the extent of the company's deceit. One woman, Julie, recounted how she had taken out loans to invest, convinced that her family's future depended on this one bold move. I could hear the shake in her voice as she relayed the moment she realized Tech Vision had vanished, leaving her in crippling debt. "I didn't just lose money, I lost my future," she cried. As I listened, I felt a piece of my heart shatter for her, and I was terrified of becoming her. It was during one of these late-night video calls with the group that I first heard talk of taking action. Someone suggested reaching out to the media to expose Tech Vision for the fraud they truly were. My heart raced at the prospect. This was it, this could be my moment to strike back, to shine a light on their lies. But just as I was feeling empowered, a harsh reminder of my reality crashed down on me. That same week, I received a phone call I dreaded. It was my bank, the one I had trusted with my life's savings. They had noticed unusual activity on my account and wanted to discuss it, probing politely but firmly. The weight of shame and disbelief crashed over me like a tidal wave. Had they figured out my investment was a scam? Did they think I was complicit in some sort of financial misconduct? My palms were sweaty as I sat in the cold rush of panic, unable to articulate the truth. "There's been a mistake," I stammered, my voice trembling. I felt so small, so exposed. I could almost hear the judgment in their voice as they told me they would need to escalate the matter further. That was the moment it hit me, I was losing control of everything. My finances, my future, my reputation. I had been walking on a tightrope of despair and uncertainty, but now I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. The final straw, utterly crushing, yet igniting a fire within me, was the realization that I was not just a victim of a scam, I was a pawn in a game I never chose to play. This wasn't just about money anymore, this was about reclaiming my dignity, my power, my life. The phone call rattled me deeply. I hung up, my heart pounding in my chest, and the suffocating weight of embarrassment settled heavily on my shoulders. For weeks, I had been stewing in silence, pretending that all was well while my world crumbled around me. But now, here I was, standing at a crossroads where I could either succumb to the weight of my humiliation or rise from the ashes of my shame and fight back. I collapsed onto my couch, my breath quickening as I thought of everything I had lost. Not just the money, though that stung like a fresh wound, but also the trust I once had in myself. I had allowed hope to occupy the space where caution should have thrived. Each day this scamming company eluded justice felt like a personal affront, and each story of another victim echoed my own. I could almost hear their voices melding into one unified chant: we were wronged. We deserve justice. As I sat there, the realization dawned on me that I wasn't just some passive bystander in this narrative, I could be the architect of my own story. This was my moment to turn despair into action. I took a deep breath and pulled out my laptop, the cool metal grounding me in reality. I could feel the crackling energy of determination wrapping around me like a cloak. I had spent too long consumed by my thoughts, and it was time to channel that energy into something constructive. I began typing furiously, assembling every detail of my experience, the promises made, the assurances given, the details that had lured me into their carefully woven trap. I would document everything, not just for myself, but to expose them to the world. But I needed more than just my own voice. I needed allies. I turned back to the Facebook group, my fingers racing over the keys as I penned a message calling for an urgent meeting. We need to unite our stories. We can't let them get away with this. I hit send, each click feeling like a battle cry reverberating off the walls of my despair. As I waited for responses, the seconds felt like hours. Anxiety gnawed at my stomach, but I refused to back down. I envisioned Max's face, his smug smile as he counted his ill-gotten gains. Rage bubbled within me, and I could hear the voices of all the victims, the mothers, the fathers, the retirees, rallying behind a shared purpose. I wasn't alone anymore. I had a team, albeit a virtual one, and together we could be a force stronger than any one of us alone. Finally, the notifications began to ping, each one a spark igniting the kindling of defiance within me. Victims poured in with their stories, each one more tragic than the last. A mother whose family home was at stake, a college student who had risked everything on a dream. Together, we formed a coalition of the wronged, and the account of our collective misery began to take shape. That week, we gathered virtually, voices and faces emanating from screens, united in our grief and our righteousness. I felt the electric energy of our anger coalesce into a charge of determination. We can't. As the days turned into weeks, our coalition grew stronger. Each member brought unique strengths to the table, some had legal backgrounds, others were social media savants, and a few were experienced investors who understood the intricacies of finance far better than I did. Together, we formed a battle plan that promised an electrifying revenge on Tech Vision and their deceitful CEO, Max. Here's how we intended to execute our revenge step by step. Our first course of action was simple yet essential: document every interaction and transaction we had with Tech Vision. Everyone shared their emails, recorded calls, and any promotional materials they'd received. As individuals, we were strong, but together we formed a formidable archive of evidence that every investor had been misled. I took the lead in organizing this, creating a shared Google Drive folder filled with documents, screenshots, and testimonies, our collective tale of betrayal. Once we had amassed enough documentation, we sought out a legal expert specializing in fraud cases. We pooled our resources to hire a reputable lawyer who had experience with class action lawsuits. This was crucial because we all understood that taking down a company like Tech Vision wouldn't just be a matter of angry emails, it required a strategic and lawful approach. While our legal battle was building momentum, we simultaneously turned our attention to the media. I drafted a compelling press release detailing our stories and the flagrant deceit behind Tech Vision. With the help of our social media expert, we crafted a campaign that would grab headlines. We wanted to create a buzz around our plight, knowing that media exposure could lead to greater scrutiny of Tech Vision. We contacted various news outlets, local Seattle stations, and even national blogs dedicated to financial scams. I felt a surge of power each time I hit send on an email, knowing that I was taking the fight directly to the public. Armed with our stories and evidence, we launched a social media blitz. We created a dedicated hashtag #ExposeTechVision, and encouraged our allies to share their experiences online. Each tweet, each post, each share became a brick in our fortress of awareness, drawing attention from other victims and financial watchdogs. As the shares multiplied, I could feel the anticipation building within me. It was thrilling to see our collective voice amplify. I imagined Max, somewhere in his lavish office, monitoring the unfolding storm of outrage that we were creating. Fueled by the momentum we had built, we organized a public protest outside the TechVision office. We designed bold signs that read "Don't trust TechVision" and "Justice for investors." The idea was to raise awareness about the scam and draw attention from potential investors who might still be in the dark. This was a pivotal point in our plan. The public protest was not just about making noise, it was about reclaiming our power and standing united against the tyranny of deception. I envisioned the sea of faces, all of us rising in solidarity, demanding accountability. Recognizing the need for a stronger voice, we reached out to victim advocacy groups and consumer protection organizations. We learned about others who had suffered due to TechVision's fraudulent activities, and we invited them to join our movement. This not only bolstered our numbers but added credibility to our cause. With our lawyer in place and ample evidence gathered, we filed a class action lawsuit the day of the protest arrived, heavy with the weight of anticipation. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the bustling streets of Seattle. I stood at the forefront, flanked by dozens of other victims, each of us holding signs in trembling hands. Heartbeats drummed in unison, each pulse echoing my own anxiety. This was it. As we marched toward the TechVision office, I could feel adrenaline coursing through my veins. The streets buzzed with energy. Faces turned to us, eyebrows raised, whispers rippling like the wind. I could taste the electricity in the air, a potent mix of fear and hope. Fear of repercussions, hope for justice. Justice for investors. We chanted, our voices ringing out like a battle cry. Each repetition of that phrase felt like a hammer striking a nail, a declaration that we would not be silenced. I couldn't help but scan the crowd for Max. My heart thudded painfully against my chest, a blend of rage and excitement swelling within me. Would he show his face? Would he see how many lives he had disrupted? As we reached the entrance of TechVision's sleek glass building, I noticed a few employees peering out, their expressions a mix of confusion and concern. I felt a surge of satisfaction as I imagined the discomfort they must be feeling, knowing they were part of a sinking ship. One of them pointed at us, a flicker of panic dancing in their eyes. Good. They should be scared. The protest grew louder, voices merging into a wave of anger and frustration. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. It was time to take the plunge into the abyss of confrontation. With a nod from the leader of our coalition, I stepped forward, gripping a megaphone tightly like a lifeline. Today, we stand not just for ourselves, but for every single soul who has lost their dreams, their savings, their trust, I shouted, my voice echoing through the air. TechVision has robbed us of our future, but we are here to reclaim our power. The crowd erupted in cheers, a roar so fierce it sent shivers down my spine. This was the moment I had been waiting for, a reckoning that was long overdue. I could see the faces of those around me, the anger, the determination, the hope, a tapestry of raw emotion. This was about more than just money, it was about dignity, about standing up against the cruelty of deception. Suddenly, I spotted him. Max stood at the entrance, flanked by 2 security guards, his face pale and drawn. His confident air had crumbled, replaced by an expression of disbelief. The man who had once charmed me with promises now looked cornered, a trapped animal in the face of undeniable truth. The crowd's energy shifted, a collective gasp rippling through us like a shockwave. Max, I shouted, pointing directly at him, the word cutting through the air like a blade. You think you can just take our money and disappear? We will not let you hide behind your lies. His eyes widened, disbelief morphing into something deeper, a flicker of fear. I could see the wheels turning in his head, the realization dawning that he was no longer the puppeteer. The strings had snapped, and he was now at the mercy of the very people he had scammed. The crowd surged forward, inching towards him, and I felt a primal instinct ignite within me. This wasn't just about exposing him, it was about reclaiming the narrative. I stepped closer, a fire blazing in my chest. The protest was a catalyst, a moment that splintered my reality into a before and after. We had made headlines, our stories cascading across news outlets like a tidal wave. Victims turned advocates, we had transformed our pain into a weapon against those who had wronged us. But amidst the chaos, the euphoria of the moment was soon overshadowed by a harsh reality. In the days that followed, the adrenaline faded, leaving behind a heavy ache in my chest. The aftermath of the protest was a whirlwind of emotions, triumph mingled with uncertainty. Though we had drawn significant attention to tech vision and its fraudulent practices, we were still fighting an uphill battle. I began to see the complexities of taking on a company that had seemingly vanished into thin air, like smoke blowing in the wind. A few days after the protest, I stood at my window, staring at the Seattle skyline. The city seemed to mock me with its glimmering beauty, while I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. I had put all my energy into fighting for our cause, but what did it really mean for me? The thrill of the protest had given way to the sobering reality that my financial losses were still there, a nagging reminder of my vulnerability. As I sipped my morning coffee, my phone buzzed relentlessly, a mix of notifications and messages from fellow victims. They were hopeful, buoyed by the publicity we had garnered. "We're gaining traction," they wrote, ecstatic about a potential interview with a well-known news anchor who wanted to discuss our stories. I felt the flicker of hope they carried, but it was tinged with a deep-seated fear of vulnerability that still haunted me. Was I really ready to open up about my darkest moments to the world? Then, the media coverage hit a tipping point. An investigative news team picked up our story and began delving into the web of deception spun by tech vision. They uncovered other victims who had come forward, some who had even lost their life savings. I watched as the stories unfolded on the evening news, each segment stacking on top of the last like a tower of strength. Despite the darkness of each tale, it was hard not to feel a surge of pride, each voice, each heartbreak becoming part of a greater narrative that demanded justice. But the emotional toll was immense. My own story felt laid bare for all to see, and I grappled with an unsettling mixture of vulnerability and bravery. The feelings of shame and humiliation resurfaced, pulling me under like a riptide, dragging me back to that moment when I had unwittingly handed over my dreams. Each time a new victim's story aired, I felt both kinship and despair. These were lives disrupted because of our naive faith in a false promise. Through it all, I kept in close contact with Hannah and Ben, who had initially urged me to invest. I could feel the weight of their concern and guilt, but to be honest, I was angry with them. They had believed in tech vision, and in a way, they had believed in me. It felt like betrayal mixed with love, a complicated mess of emotions that bore heavily on our friendships. One night, over a tense dinner, I decided to confront them, my heart racing as I spoke the words I had bottled up for too long. "You both believed in tech vision. You believed in Max. I need you to understand what that did to me. It was like I was drowning, and you didn't even notice." Hannah looked devastated, her cheeks flushed with guilt. "Claire, we were wrong, and I'm so sorry. We never meant."
It's strange how life can twist and turn so unexpectedly, like a river carving its way through rock. If you had asked me 2 years ago, while I held my newborn girl in my arms, if I believed in payback, I would have laughed it off, reveling in the joy of new motherhood. But here I am now, sitting in the dim light of my living room, the walls adorned with faded memories and echoes of laughter that feel impossibly distant. My name? Well, I don't think that matters much anymore. What matters is understanding how I ended up here, how love turned to bitterness and hope to despair, all because of the very man who once made my heart race the way it did under the soft, warm glow of fairy lights on our first date. Adam. He was everything I thought I ever wanted, charming, ambitious, and, perhaps most importantly, the father of my child. But what a beautiful illusion that was. The summer sun poured through the window that day, one of those golden afternoons where everything feels perfect, the world wrapped in a cozy blanket of warmth. I had been nursing Lily, her tiny fingers wrapping around my thumb, her baby coos filling the house with a sweetness that made the chaos of new parenthood seem bearable. Adam was supposed to come home early from work that day. He promised he'd help me with the mountain of laundry piling up like an insurmountable wave. "I've got your back," he texted, yet his late-night meetings had turned into an affair with ambition, leaving me to navigate the uncertainties of new motherhood alone. And I should have known, when a man is searching for recognition in the boardroom, he often forgets the love that exists at home. I can still feel the sting of disappointment, like a raw wound that never quite healed. I would wait, staring at the clock, praying he'd walk in and sweep me off my feet, but instead, I'd be left clutching my baby girl, wondering if I was enough for both of us. Then came the night that shattered everything. The call I received from an unknown number, his voice echoing in my mind as I listened to the words that cut deep, each syllable coated in betrayal. "It's not what you think," he pleaded, but those words were empty sounds in a spiraling universe. I wanted him to hear me, to listen for once, but he'd already chosen his path, one paved with shattered promises and whispered lies. So, here I am, looking back at the moments that led to this, a single mother standing at the precipice of revenge, the darkness swirling around me like a storm. I know it's not healthy to dwell on such thoughts, to cling to anger like a lifeline, but sometimes, the heart doesn't listen to what the mind knows is wrong. I can't change what happened, nor do I want to forget. Instead, I find solace in the notion that, perhaps, there's a way to reclaim my voice, a way to ensure Adam finally understands the weight of his choices. Just a little nudge, a flicker of retribution, and I'll show him that I am not just a shadow lurking in the corners of his life. I'm stronger than he ever believed. And this is where our story begins. As the days blurred into nights, the isolation began to seep beneath my skin, gnawing at my sanity. The first sign of Adam's betrayal didn't hit me like a storm, it crept in like a thief in the night, subtle but insidious. I remember the way he would come home with a scent of cologne that wasn't his, sharp and foreign, each time he claimed to be working late. I brushed it off, convincing myself that it was merely a new fragrance he had taken a liking to. How naive I was. But then, those late nights turned into a routine. The excuses piled up like the dirty dishes in my sink, and I could feel the tension growing between us, like a taut string ready to snap. I'd sit on the worn-out couch, Lily cradled in my arms, her soft breaths a soothing balm on my frayed nerves. "He'll come home soon," I'd tell myself. But with each minute that ticked by, doubt seeped into my heart. The moment I discovered the truth is etched into my memory like a scar. It was a rainy Thursday, the kind of day that magnifies feelings of melancholy. I had just finished a long day of juggling baby cries and diaper changes when my phone buzzed with a message from a friend. I saw Adam at the bar with someone. "You should talk to him." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. At first, I felt disbelief. I wanted to laugh it off, to write it off as gossip or misunderstanding. But the fluttering in my stomach told a different story. I hesitated, fear mixing with an urge I couldn't quite identify. I should confront him, but what would I say? I had no proof. Just whispers. But the instinct to protect my family ignited a fire within me, urging me to investigate further. That evening, I put on my coat, Lily bundled up in her tiny onesie, and I drove towards the bar my friend had mentioned, the place where our laughter echoed just a year prior. I was a ghost of myself, floating through the parking lot, the neon lights casting an eerie glow on my skin. The air was thick with tension and tainted with dread. Peering through the glass, I saw him, my Adam, leaning against the bar, a beautiful woman with striking blonde hair perched on the stool beside him. My heart raced, each beat laced with disbelief. I waited for the warmth of anger to wash over me, but the chill of betrayal enveloped me instead. I watched as he leaned in, laughing in a way that felt painfully foreign. I wanted to turn away, to shield myself from the reality that was unfolding before my very eyes, but I was rooted to the spot. Each laugh echoed in my ears, a haunting melody of our past. I can't explain the flood of emotions that crashed over me, confusion, sadness, anger, all intertwined, creating a tempest within. The little girl in my arms began to stir, sensing my turmoil. I couldn't help but think, why can't you just see me? Hear me? And then it hit me hard, I was not just watching a man betray me, I felt like a fool for believing his promises, for clinging to the idea of us. The weight of anger turned to guilt, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I had somehow failed to be the partner he needed. Had I not pushed him enough? Was I just another obstacle in his pursuit of greatness? The inner dialogue twisted itself around my heart, squeezing tighter with every breath. In that moment, something shifted. I realized I was losing myself in a world where trust had turned to ashes and love evaporated into bitterness. I felt fragile, like a glass figurine left to the mercy of an earthquake. The laughter I once cherished now felt like clattering shards, echoing mockingly in my ears. The weeks that followed were a blur of humiliation and solitude. I confronted Adam about what I'd seen, my voice trembling yet laced with the strength I thought I had lost. He denied it, of course. It was just a colleague from work, he said, eyes wide with feigned innocence. But I could see the flicker of panic in his gaze, a fleeting glimpse of the man he was attempting to mask beneath layers of deception. "You're being paranoid." Paranoid. That word dug into me like a knife, twisting and turning until it broke the surface of my skin. I desperately wanted to believe him. But once that veil of trust was ripped away, how could I? Each time I saw him, I felt like I was staring at a stranger, someone who had betrayed the very essence of what we built together. And so the isolation deepened. Friends tried to reach out, but I pushed them away, convinced they wouldn't understand. I felt like a burden, a woman too broken to be fixed. When they invited me out, I made excuses. I have to stay home with the baby, or I'm too tired. I was terrified that they might see the hurt in my eyes, witness the unraveling of my spirit. One night, while scrolling through social media, an act of self-torture, I now realize, I stumbled upon a picture of Adam, his arm wrapped around that woman. The caption read, "Best night ever." A wave of nausea crashed over me as I dropped my phone onto the coffee table, watching it bounce clumsily before falling to the floor. How could he do this to me? To us? My heart shattered further into pieces, each fragment a reminder of what I once believed was love. I remember looking down at Lily, her innocent face unaware of the darkness looming over her life. What kind of future could I possibly give her? My world felt like it was crumbling, and just when I thought things couldn't get worse, an even more crushing blow landed. One evening, I received an unexpected visit from Adam's mother, a woman I had loved and respected. She arrived with a sympathetic smile, but there was something ominous lurking in her expression. "I just wanted to check on you," she said, but it quickly became clear that this was not a social call. "Honey, Adam has shared some concerns about you. He thinks you need help." Her words hit me like an icy wave, crashing onto the shore of my already battered self-esteem. Help? What did he tell her? I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks, the vein in my temple throbbing in reaction to the anger boiling inside me. I was not the one who needed help, he was the one who had disrespected the very foundation of our family. I managed to nod politely, despite the whirlwind of emotions raging within. After she left, I stood frozen in the middle of my living room, the weight of her visit pressing down on me like a heavy blanket. I felt the walls closing in, the isolation suffocating me. It became increasingly clear that my life was spiraling into a pit of despair, and the harder I tried to claw my way out, the deeper I seemed to sink. In those moments, I lost trust not just in Adam, but in myself. A flicker of a bold thought ignited within me, not just the desire to get back at him, but a desperate need to reclaim my identity. I was tired of being the silent victim in a narrative I hadn't chosen. That night, as the darkness enveloped my home, I sat on the floor surrounded by discarded toys and the remnants of my former life. My heart pounded with realization, a surge of clarity cutting through the fog of anger and despair. I was done being passive. I had been patient long enough, waiting for someone to hear me, to acknowledge the pain I felt. But maybe I shouldn't be waiting for apologies or changes from someone who couldn't comprehend the damage he had done. Instead, I needed to take control of my own story. The warmth of my fury coursed through my veins, igniting a spark I hadn't felt in months. I thought about the moments Adam had taken away from me, the moments of laughter and joy, the dreams of a family I had fought so hard to create. And suddenly, the idea of revenge didn't seem so monstrous, rather, it felt like a necessary step towards rebuilding my shattered self. What if I could show him the consequences of his actions? The thought curled around me like a warm blanket as I began to imagine the possibilities. Revenge didn't have to be about violence or chaos, it could be an intricate web of calculated actions, a way to force him to truly see the depths of my pain. Then, the final straw snapped. I stumbled across a text thread on his phone, carelessly left unlocked one evening. His casual exchanges with that woman were not only flirty but also full of plans, shared evenings, secret rendezvous, and inside jokes that made my heart sink. I felt the betrayal burn anew, and with it, a dark resolution coiled tightly around my heart. If he thought he could just walk away from the life we had built together, leaving me to pick up the pieces, then I would show him how deep his betrayal truly ran. In that moment, a cold, calculated clarity descended upon me. I began to imagine how I could turn the tables, how I could let him feel what it was like to lose something precious. I envisioned ways to disrupt his comfortable world, to make him question the choices he had made and the life he had discarded. What if I could expose his lies? What if I could reveal the truth to his family, his friends, the very people whose views he had manipulated to maintain his facade? The thought propelled me into planning mode, every detail meticulously weaving together like the pieces of a puzzle. Was it petty? Maybe. But wasn't it, in some twisted way, cathartic? I felt alive with purpose, a sensation I hadn't experienced in what felt like an eternity. As I allowed the idea of revenge to consume me, I felt an exhilarating rush of power. It was mine. It was a reclaiming of my narrative, a way to ensure that Adam understood the depth of his actions and the pain they had caused. I would no longer be the woman sitting in silence, waiting for validation. Instead, I would be the force that would shake his world to its core. With each passing day, I meticulously crafted my plan, the blueprint for my revenge unfolding before me like a well-practiced script. I would gather evidence, document every betrayal, and set the stage for his revealing. I would reveal to him, in the most public way possible, how his choices would impact not just me, but the very fabric of his life. It was time to stop being the victim. If he thought he could gather evidence, the first step in my plan was to collect undeniable proof of Adam's infidelity. I started discreetly monitoring his social media, saving screenshots of his flirtatious exchanges with that woman. I also reached out to a few of our mutual friends, keeping my inquiries casual. I wanted to gather intel on what he had told them about me and our situation. I even saved the messages my friend had sent me about seeing them together, dating back to the first time he had betrayed my trust. The more evidence I had, the stronger my case would be. 2. Recruit allies. I knew I wasn't alone in this fight. My best friend, Sarah, had always been a loyal confidant and someone who could help me execute my plan. I reached out to her, and after pouring my heart out, she agreed to help me. Together, we brainstormed ways to ensure Adam would not only feel the pain of his actions but also understand the consequences of losing me and Lily. Sarah brought new ideas to the table, including ways to catch him off guard. 3. Create a fake social media account. With Sarah's help, I created a fake social media account using an alias. It was time to infiltrate Adam's world. I used this account to connect with his colleagues and friends, slipping into the social circles he frequented without him suspecting a thing. I wanted to gather more insider information about his activities and, if possible, find out how many people knew about his betrayal. 4. Plant the seed of doubt. I began to casually drop hints to Adam's friends about his behavior. I would express my concerns over how distant he had become, saying things like, "I hope he's not getting too caught up with those late hours at the office," or, "Has he mentioned anything about an affair?" I wanted to create an atmosphere where he would feel uneasy, unsure of who knew what. This would sow the seeds of doubt in his mind, making him second-guess his actions and the trust he had in those around him. 5. Set up a reveal. Once I had gathered enough evidence and created the perfect environment of tension, it was time to orchestrate the grand reveal. I planned a casual dinner party at my place, inviting a few of our close friends and family members, including Adam. It was the perfect setting, a place where I could create a facade of normalcy while preparing to unveil the truth. 6. The final touch. The night of the dinner party arrived. Sarah helped me set the atmosphere, decorating the table with candles and flowers, creating an ambience that would contrast sharply with the storm brewing underneath. I prepared a slideshow of our memories together, mixed in with screenshots of Adam's text to that woman. The juxtaposition would be striking. As everyone sat down to dinner, I planned to have a casual conversation about relationships, love, and loyalty, letting the tension build before dropping my bombshell. 7. Execute the plan. As the dinner progressed, I would navigate the conversation towards fidelity, sharing stories of trust and betrayal. When the moment felt right, I would pull out my phone, telling everyone I had something special to share. I'd start the slideshow as a nostalgic trip down memory lane, but slowly, the tone would shift. The laughter would dim as the pictures of the happy family melted into evidence of Adam's lies. 8. The climax. At that moment, I would pause for effect before saying, "But I think we need to talk about what really happened behind the scenes." The atmosphere was thick, charged with an electric anticipation as friends laughed and shared stories around the dinner table. I felt both alive and numb, the delicate balance of excitement and dread swirling within me. The flickering candlelight cast soft shadows on their faces, yet I was acutely aware of the tension lurking beneath the surface. When I finally stood to present my slideshow, I could hardly hear the buzzing conversations around me. My heart thundered in my chest, drowning out the laughter that felt so foreign now. With trembling fingers, I tapped my phone, igniting the screen to life. The first image appeared, a blissful family picture of us at the park, Lily giggling in Adam's arms. "Remember this?" I began, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. "The day we thought we had it all figured out." Laughter echoed through the room, momentarily easing the tension. But as the images shifted to happier moments, I could feel Adam's gaze on me, the flicker of confusion morphing into wariness. His brow furrowed slightly, but I pressed on. Each image slowly morphed into the next, transitioning seamlessly into the darker moments of my betrayal. I casually commented on our beautiful memories, but I could see Adam's smile dimming with every passing image. The lightheartedness began to fade as I approached the climax of my plan. Then, the mood took a sharp turn. With a breath that trembled in my throat, I changed the tempo of my speech. "But sometimes, things aren't what they seem," I said, my voice steady, almost eerily calm. I could feel the eyes of our friends shifting toward Adam, and the delighted chatter slowly faded into an uneasy silence. "Sometimes, what we thought was love is merely a mask for betrayal." As the next image flickered onto the screen, it displayed the damning text messages, the ones that had made my heart plummet into despair. I could hear the collective intake of breath from the room. Adam's face turned pale, his expression morphing from confusion to horror as the screen filled with evidence of his betrayal, the words jumping off the screen like daggers. "Look at this," I said, my voice rising above the mounting silence. "This is what you've been doing behind closed doors, Adam?" I felt liberated as the truth rolled off my tongue, a cathartic release that sent chills down my spine. "While I was home caring for our daughter, you were out here flirting, lying, and betraying the trust we built together." His eyes darted around the room, searching for support, but the faces of our friends began to scrutinize him, incredulity etched into their expressions. I could see the gears turning in their minds, the realization gripping them as they processed the betrayal they had, unknowingly, been complicit in. Adam opened his mouth in protest, desperately trying to grasp at the straws of defense. "It's not what you think. I can explain," he stammered, but his voice faltered against the weight of the truth. "Explain?" I shot back, letting the bitterness seep into my words. "Explain what?" "How you've undermined every promise we made. How you thought I wouldn't find out." I stepped closer, my heart racing with a potent combination of rage and empowerment. "You should have listened, Adam. I begged you to hear me when I told you I felt alone. But you turned your back on me." His expression morphed into one of panic as I swiped through more damning texts, revealing his careless words, though the room was stifling, the silence that followed my revelation thick and uncomfortable. Every eye was on Adam, their disbelief mingling with the dawning realization of the man they thought they knew. My pulse quickened as I watched him squirm under the weight of his own actions. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the culmination of my plan, where his betrayal was laid bare before those who had once supported him unconditionally. But amidst the chaos of emotions swirling around me, an unexpected wave of sympathy washed over me. This was not just Adam's downfall, it was also the unraveling of a family, a daughter who would inevitably bear the scars of this moment. As I watched his face pale, I could feel the anger within me shift into something oddly bittersweet. Was this really what I wanted? As whispers of disbelief filled the air, I turned my gaze away from Adam, my heart aching for Lily, who was blissfully unaware of the storm brewing in her life. All she wanted was a loving family, and here I was, tearing apart the very fabric of that dream. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my voice. I didn't want this, I confessed, my heart heavy with the realization that while I sought revenge, it would only lead to more pain for my child. In that moment, I understood the duality of revenge. It offered a fleeting sense of empowerment but carried with it an undeniable burden. I had fought so hard to reclaim my narrative, yet I couldn't escape the undeniable truth that every action has consequences, especially when those actions involve the people we love. Adam stumbled out of the chair he had been sitting in, his face flushed with humiliation. You set me up, he accused, his voice trembling. But I could see the guilt flickering in his eyes, the way he struggled to find words that would absolve him of responsibility. My heart hardened again. He was still trying to twist the narrative to his advantage, even now. It's not a setup if you walked right into it, I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. You chose this path, Adam. You chose to betray me. And now, the truth is finally out. The tension in the room was palpable. Our friends shifted uncomfortably in their seats, glancing between Adam and me as if waiting for a cue. I could sense the rift forming, the bonds of friendship being tested under the weight of betrayal. It felt like a reckoning, an inevitable fallout that had been brewing for far too long. As I continued to confront Adam, the truth began to settle over the room like a dark cloud. Some friends, once firmly in his corner, started to express their disbelief and disappointment. How could you do this to her? One of them finally spoke up, a friend who had always seen the good in Adam. We trusted you. Their words cut deeper than any dagger. I had imagined this moment so many times, but hearing his friends question him, seeing the disappointment etched on their faces, stung with an unexpected intensity. I had wanted to dismantle his world, to bring him down, but I never envisioned the collateral damage it would leave in its wake. I felt the tears mist in my eyes, but I wouldn't let them fall. Not now. Not when I was so close to reclaiming my power. I deserve to be heard, and so does Lily, I reiterated, my voice stronger than before. I won't let this man take away my right to my own happiness. Eventually, Adam stumbled out of the room,